Enga mana, enga reo, enga rangatiratanga. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I have just honoured in Māori, the indigenous language of my birth country, New Zealand, Aotearoa, New Zealand, land of the long white cloud, the mana, or the power in this room, and the rangatiratanga, the leadership. So it is my very great privilege to introduce a power-packed panel of brilliant women leaders. First of all, I'd like to set the scene. Can anyone tell me in how many countries we have now reached gender parity in practice? Any guesses? I'm getting big zeros. This is a very well-educated group. Can anyone tell me what percentage of countries still have discriminatory laws on the books preventing women from being economically active? 30%. Do I have an increase on 30? 50%. Do I have an increase on 50? 70. Do I have an increase on 70? 90%. Somebody brilliant? Got it right back there. Thank you, lady in the beautiful hat. 90% of countries in 2017 still have at least one discriminatory law on the books. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not have a level playing field, which is why this panel is so important. Despite the fact that women are still almost universally discriminated against and have extra work to do to be engaged in the productive economy, we know that a woman's perspective is particularly important. McKinsey has recently done research that shows that $12 trillion could be added to the global economy annually if only we were to go to just best in regional practice. Can anyone guess how many trillion would be added to the global economy if we were to go to best in practice globally? 30. Very good. Close. 27 trillion. $27 trillion. So the business case is very clear, and I've been thrilled to hear the brilliance of the people who've spoken at the event in terms of how do we frame these arguments. So it's my very great privilege to invite this wonderful group of women to share with you, and I am going to give you just a quick one-liner on each before I invite them to say something about themselves, the work that they're doing, and why they are here at AREI-AREDAY. Sitting to my left is Osprey Orielle, who is the co-founder and director of We Can, the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network. And she's working internationally with grassroots and Indigenous leaders, as well as policymakers and scientists. Next to Osprey, we have Anita Sanchez, Dr. Anita Sanchez, who is actually bringing Indigenous wisdom, hearts as well as minds, into the corporate world and is bridging that gap between Indigenous wisdom and our corporate leaders. Next to Anita, we have Aria, who is a media guru, an actress, director, writer, producer, and very importantly, the mother of an 11-year-old girl. And finally, last but definitely not least, we have Katie Hoffman, who is an investor, an entrepreneur in residence, and has been instrumental in getting some of the largest pension funds in the country to think about ethical capital and clean energy in their funds. So you can see we have a remarkable array of talent. Despite the fact there's not a level playing field, women are still doing amazing things. So Osprey, may I invite you to please tell us a little bit about the work you're doing and why you're here at AREI-AREDAY.
Thank you so much, and I just want to give a shout out again to Sally and Chip for again putting together such an incredible conference and allowing there to be so many different aspects of the world community being represented as we tackle climate change. So thank you both so much. So I am the Executive Director of the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, and I want to make a few comments, but I want to start with a video. It's a 1-minute video, but I think it will enliven the crowd and also really show you the force of women. So if you go ahead and play that video, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
People gonna rise like the water, gonna calm this crisis down. I hear the voice of my great-granddaughter saying, keep it right. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. Break your face. Gotta fight to be free. Gotta fight to be free. All the workers raise your fists. All the workers raise your fists. Life. Water is life. Meaning we Johnny. Water is life. Meaning we Johnny. Water is life. People gonna rise like the water. Gonna calm this crisis down. I hear the voices of my great-granddaughter saying, keep it in the ground.
So what I want to start by saying is that so many people I talk to always ask me, why is your organization focused on women? And we put out a report called the Women's Climate Action Agenda, which you can find on our website, that really goes into great detail about the statistics around women and why they're central to sustainability. But what I will share here is that it's not just morally and ethically correct that we have a level playing field. It turns out you cannot get to sustainability unless you include women. 60 to 80% of all household food production around the world is done by women. When you're in developing countries, if you want to resolve water problems, the UN has shown over and over again through their studies that if you don't include women, the water programs don't work. 80% of all consumer purchases in the global north in most wealthy countries is decided by women. So if we want to shift to a clean energy economy and really improve our local economies, you need to engage women. Whether we're talking about the grass tops or the grassroots, if you look at a lot of policies around improving what is happening with the environment, you have to have women at the decision-making table. For children's health, to stabilize population, to improve local economy, you need to include women. So I encourage you to really think about this gender gap in the work you're doing and how this is critical. It's sort of like this bigger narrative we're talking about. This is part of the bigger narrative. I think there's been some discussion today also about whether or not we're working sort of inside institutions, inside government, inside corporations, or we're in advocacy groups or in other ways of working. I want to bring to this conversation also the role of what's happening on the streets, because we're seeing a huge effort that is happening that women are leading in many ways. And I think it's not an either-or narrative, but a both-and narrative, that we really need to push up from the grassroots, frontline communities that are really showing us what's happening around food, water, and energy. And you better believe women are on the front lines of that. They're the ones impacted first and worst by environmental degradation and climate change. And so they are forced and brilliantly and fiercely responding to that with incredible solutions at the local and national and international level. So I think we need to really recognize that that push from the ground, combined with the grass tops and leadership in policy institutions, the government and corporations, is essential. And I'll just leave with one other point, which is, you know, is very powerful to see the Women's March. Some of you may have participated, the Women's March on Washington that happened right after the inauguration of our number 45. Let's just leave it at that. And it was the largest protest demonstration in US history. I repeat, women around the world protested, not just in the US, but all over the world. That is phenomenal. So when you're thinking about how you're going to reclaim our democracy, get women engaged, I would really remember that this was the largest march that we've seen around the world in US history. And I say around the world because it just didn't happen in the US. So that was a huge response. And since then, a lot of the organizations that we work with in our network have shown that there's been an increase in the US of 13,000 more women interested in running for office. So women are really on fire. Okay. So just remember the women in your work.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Sanchez.
Yes. Chip and Sally, this is my first time to come. I'm speaking to you and all my precious relations out there. I am Native American Aztec. I feel my elders present. I'm also Mexican American. As the tears come even faster because of that. You have expanded my mind. You caused me to be more curious of when something was blocked. You've expanded my heart. You allowed me to have my heart broken in the last couple of days from your sharing. And you've expanded it again. That's life. And that's why I'm here. I'm here because of a dream. I'm here because of the wisdom of the elders that says that we are all one. And that we can be good medicine to each other when we remember our fullness. And so I come here, having worked with many corporations, global corporations all over the world. I know there's an IBMer here, but I had the best job in IBM. I worked with all the women of color in starting their global women's process, and it was just amazing. And I've been able to do that kind of work all over the world. But I'm here because of Pachamama Alliance, which so fits in alignment with the indigenous wisdom because it comes from that. Pachamama Alliance was started because of a dream, because of a nightmare that was happening in the Amazon rainforest. The destruction was coming. And rather than the indigenous people closing down or wanting to fight, instead they did the courageous. They did what you would do in this circle where you know that the people, the earth and spirit are all one. And they called in dream for Pachamama Alliance to come. And I'll share more about that later, but what I want to say before we show just a quick 1-minute film is that we today, the Pachamama Alliance, has been in existence 22 years. It has over 4,000 volunteer facilitators, from PhDs to homeless people of every race and every culture. We're in 97 different countries. You'd laugh when I tell you the size of the budget is so small with all that we do. But we do it because of that circle. We do it because we know we are all precious relations. Two-legged, four-legged, winged, water, minerals, all of that. That diversity is important. And with that, I thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel, because when we talk about women, I want the picture in your head to be of all women, of all races, cultures, and ethnicities. So I invite you to show that 1-minute piece with the women from the Ashwar.
Vika achuar noit he, vika achuar asan, shiram vika hunaka hiya he, waringsha ukunam yanchuk amiana nuka enzanga achamiai, I nukurish waitsar uchinja takuarmi, tayamaike I puhosar shiram wenhi.
Vika ikama nukuri henge, inya nukuri yaya he, yanchuk inya nukuri ninki takwenya time ikamnom keshahan makas takwenya kuwetho armi itra ikama nukuri ta hindindro samte yamake inya nukurin iwinya nawandron kairon shiram yainya he hana maktakum tiksan shiram yainya kun shiram nakapah
Vininti merka na nukwach yaya hinya en o tuki inyang natsuk en sang yengi wimo ati na shiram yeminya o inye sachmo en kiwinak in chapan ham tikram karnya isha en kir unui merar pan hakir witin tasan nonatahi.
I will share more afterwards and bring those women back in, but they're here now. And thank you for clapping for them, because I'll see them in a couple of weeks. I'll be leading another journey in the Amazon with business leaders and their families, and I will tell them about all of you in the room clapping for them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anita. Aria.
Yes. So first of all, I just want to say how incredibly moved I am to be a part of this group, be a part of this entire event, and thank you so much, Chip, for bringing me in, and Sally for everything that you're doing. I mean, just everybody here. And you guys just moved me so much. So my journey basically began, as you mentioned, I'm an actress, and as a child, you know, I lived so fortunately. I lived on Anna Maria Island. I got to go out and pick up starfish with my feet all the time. I communed with nature. It was very powerful, deep experience. I think that everybody who's here probably shares that feeling. I don't have to expound upon it. And then I'm also an artist. And I knew from the very beginning that that's what I wanted to do, that I had to be an actor. But as I became closer to achieving my goals as an actor, I found that I did not love the projects I was getting cast in. In fact, a lot of the projects I was getting cast in, I felt like not only were they not adding to the world and the planetary discussion, that they were actually diminishing it, that they were increasing fear, and that they were just playing these dialogues over and over again, that the world is a terrible place and that people are killers, and just this very negative dialogue. And so I felt it was very important to me to change that dialogue. I oftentimes felt like I had to decide whether I wanted to continue being an actor or whether I should just go join the Greenpeace or something. And so this is my way of doing both, being an environmental activist and being an artist. So essentially what I've done is created the Global Cooling Project, and I am finding ways to connect narrative storytelling with direct online actions that you can take to lower your carbon footprint. And the goal is to help simplify it for people, to help bring it to the other side, to bring it to people who would not be showing up at documentaries, people who do not understand these issues, people who have families who are working long hours just to survive, just to try to tread water. So those people need entertainment. They need an escape. So I want to give them an escape that brings them straight up against reality, but that makes it easy for them to take direct actions so that it's not overwhelming, so that we don't fall into this hole of apathy. And I think that that's one of the most difficult things that we all have to face, is that these problems seem so overwhelming, so we have to find a way to simplify them, and we have to find a way to bring it to the other side and hopefully reach a conservative audience, to put faces on the people who are victims behind climate change, and to do it in an exciting, emotional, evocative, and sometimes humorous context so that they can handle it all.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Aria.
Yes.
Look forward to hearing more about the
Thanks.
detail. And finally, Katie, who is both an investor and an advocate.
True. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Chip and Sally, for making this a reality, and everyone for being here, sharing your energy, and these wonderful, beautiful women on stage. It's so powerful to be here and be a part of this. As was mentioned, I do work in the finance sector, and we're working to transform financial markets to address climate change. Pretty broad mandate, and I'll get into the details a little bit later. We work across asset classes because, as all of us know here, climate is a systemic issue, and it requires a systemic response, particularly within the financial markets, which you all can guess how many women are represented within that space. But before I get into that, I kind of want to talk a little bit about how I came here and who I am. And first and foremost, I'm a daughter. and I'm my mother's daughter. My dad did play a role in it, but I'm definitely my mother's daughter. And specifically, I gained skills from her that I will carry throughout my life. And I'm going to tell a little story about how I came to that. And yeah, so the story goes that my mom got cancer. And when her diagnosis came through, obviously there's the terror and fear and what are you going to do? How do I take care of my family? What's the right treatment? And I also want folks to think about how this is an allegory for what we're facing with climate change and the system that we're up against. So great uncertainty causes people to act in particular ways. What do I do to move forward? How do I make a change for myself? I want to survive, facing potentially certain extinction. And what she did is she made a decisive plan, and she talked to her doctor. She did all the digging she could possibly do. She liked to solve problems. And she found out her course forward, but when she started getting her treatment, it wasn't enough to just do it for herself. So she decided to start an organization and aggregate all of the information possible so that she could share it with other women, and particularly their caretakers, because she found that there was a lack of information and a lack of support for women facing these issues and the uncertainty that it causes, and she wanted to make sure that there was a system in place to support other women. So that is in my DNA. I think that, with what she taught me and being able to be in the face of great uncertainty and come up with a strategic plan, that's wonderful. But doing it with purpose and decisiveness and to a degree selflessness, which a lot of women do, and many of our mothers have for us and for others, I think that that's really taught me that any challenge is not too big, and that sometimes we have to lean in to the challenges that are the most terrifying. And for me, that was extractive financial markets and climate change and the intersection of the two. And I'm often told that two young women, because my business partner is 29 and I'm 28, that we could never take on the financial markets, we could never transform them, and I said, game on. So.
Fantastic. So we're seeing this huge multiplier effect from the grassroots Indigenous women's movement through the influence on the corporate world, the creative media outreach, and then game on in the systemic change at the intersect of financial markets and climate change. These are powerful women. So now, in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to ask the team to tell you the most exciting thing that they're working on right now. And then the plan, as we carefully watch the clock, is that we can open up for questions before they leave you with one compelling final thought. So, Osprey, over to you. What's the most exciting thing you're working on right now?
Well, there is so much, from the fact that we've been planting 20,000 trees in the Democratic Republic of Congo with pygmy women and just so many things. But I'm going to tell a quick story, since that's been something that has been a theme today that I think is really important, that really sort of combines what I call transformative exchanges or conversations that I think women are very skilled at. It's not that men are not, but I think this is a moment, as you saw from our video, of women really rising. So we are working on we were asked by Indigenous women from the Standing Rock movement to, and I'm not going to explain that because I don't have time. I hope you know when I say Standing Rock what that is. I'm assuming folks do. To support them in really demanding accountability from the financial institutions and banks that were invested in the Dakota Access Pipeline and Energy Transfer Partner, which was the partner company one of many that invested in the Dakota Access Pipeline. So on very short notice, we put together a team of 5 Indigenous women, flew to Norway and Switzerland very recently, and met with, in Norway, we met with the oil fund, which some of you know is the big Norwegian pension fund. We met with them. We met with the Norwegian Parliament. We met with DNB Bank. We had large events. We are on national news and radio. We flew to Switzerland, and we met with Credit Suisse Bank and others, and these are ongoing campaigns. I bring it up because it was really extraordinary in terms of bringing the grassroots together with financial institutions and, if you will, systemically patriarchal institutions and capitalistic institutions that have old paradigms that are basically based upon extractive industries and extraction from frontline communities, And as we know, 80% of all biodiversity on the earth right now is in indigenous lands. So these are very deep issues of not just protecting the climate, but also indigenous rights and protecting indigenous communities. So we had very formal meetings with bank representatives in which the women were able to tell story by story what happened in their communities and what happened at Standing Rock, from the indigenous rights to the human rights violations that occurred there, and really asking for corporate accountability and for these institutions to understand where their money is going and the effect that it's having. But it was deeper than that, because it also began this conversation around, what we want them to do with the money in terms of, shifting to clean energy, how that is a really good financial turnaround. But it was particularly poignant because you're having this conversation with the people who are impacted, and it was actually very uncomfortable at times in a good way, but basically having, if you will, white male bankers sitting there with indigenous women who are looking in the eye and saying, I flew 5,000 miles and left my family behind to look you in the eye and tell you that we were put in dog kennels. We were beaten. We had dogs put on us and we were bitten by dogs. There was a woman who almost lost her arm. Another woman did lose her eyesight. And this is because you invested in companies that hired mercenaries that attacked our people. And what were our people doing? They were protesting in a peaceful manner. No weapons, no violence. Why? Because they're saying, we need water. Water is life. That's what they were doing. They were protecting water. And how is it that we have come to in this country that a private company is trying to push through a pipeline on water, through water territories that are going to affect 17 million people, and you're attacking peaceful protesters who are standing up saying, this is what we need for our community? And I think it was something that moved them incredibly to actually hear from people on the front lines and hear from the women, because we went there very peacefully and in prayer ourselves. We never raised our voices, and we came with love to communicate. And in closing, because I'm probably out of time, I could say so many stories, but what was really moving, as an example, we have a lot of work to do, and there's many other groups involved in investment campaigns, but when we were with DNB Bank, they divested $331 million and got totally out of DAPL. Yeah. So they also told us that they will not invest in Keystone XL, and we also hear from our insider connection at DNB that they're not going to touch any more of these pipelines in indigenous lands.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
What a powerful place to end.
Yes.
Anita, I only wish we had more time.
So I know, there's so much, yes. So with the focus, for me personally, and for the organization that I'm on the board, Pachamama Alliance, and I think the clients that I serve too, is to focus on inspiring ourselves, each other, to create an environmentally sustainable, spiritually fulfilling, and socially just human presence on this planet. And those women you saw earlier are doing that. They're doing it across that vast area. And why you should care about them, of course we all do, because they're human beings, right? And the forest, we care about that. They've been caretaking that forest for us, keeping it in balance. And we know from scientists that that forest is one of the key biodiverse places, the sacred headwaters of the Amazon. So I'm really grateful to them. But I also want to say that in focusing on what we want, I'm also grounded on, I have to be clear, starting from the inside out, about what I don't want that I participate in. And I think it's some of what you were talking about, what is really underneath this narrative that we're trying to co-create. And that is, for me, is that illusion of separateness. And whenever that illusion begins to get played out in my actions, even my thoughts, needless suffering happens. But when I operate out of that consciousness of what I want and understanding that connection of people, earth, and spirit, then sitting right here, and what was described over the last couple of days is some of the darkest darkness that any of us have seen maybe in our lives. And yet look at the light. Because in the darkest darkness, the light is the brightest. And that's what I'm seeing happening. And the businesses are rising up and saying, no, you can do that out there, but in here, we're not doing that. We're respecting people. We're starting to look how we can be more respectful of the earth. We're seeing that across, wait a minute, we can't do this kind of violence against different races, or say indigenous people don't count, or you only count now because the land has all these resources, which has been happening for hundreds of years. So that really is my focus, and in that process, the Pachamama Alliance has served hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people through transformational education. And I think that's what, when I'm talking transformational, somebody already defined that earlier. I'm not talking about just this slight, little tweak. I'm talking about changing the way you think. And when people attend the many classes, whether it's the Jungle Mamas course or the Game Changer Initiative or the Awakening the Dreamer, Changing the Dream that we now can take out into corporations, we have it online as well as in communities, people do move to action. And they begin really looking at, where is that separateness playing out in my life, causing myself suffering and causing all of those around me suffering? So I'm really excited to be alive. I think this is really, I know you've heard it said, but what a great time to be alive. Every breath I take matters. Every breath you take, we get to be conscious of that. And so it's just so exciting.
And Anita, I want to give a little plug because Anita has a book coming out in September called 4 Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom in Modern Times. So I'd encourage you all to keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much. Now, what is the most exciting thing you're working on at the moment, Aria?
Well, first of all, before I get to that, actually, I just want to acknowledge something that you said that I think is so powerful and so important, and is exactly in alignment with what I'm working on as well, which is creating the positive vision. Focusing on what we want. We have to be able to see and acknowledge the darkness that's right in front of us, but we also have to hold strong to the vision of what the world can be and how it is that we can get there. And so I'm so grateful to you for saying that and for the strength that you hold here right now. And to add to what's, goodness. So as far as what's happening right now that I'm very excited about is partnering with Verushka Franceschi. We have been working together on the Global Cooling Project. And right now we are developing funds for both her film, which would be a narrative film, A Crack in Everything, and also for funds for my online original content series that I've been developing with Jeff Abigov, who was an executive producer on 2.5 Men, a writer on Cheers, The Golden Girls, Roseanne, et cetera, et cetera. So I have been working on that story, which is basically a love triangle between a single mom, an environmental activist, and an oil company lobbyist. So we get to dig into the issues behind climate change, but to do it with some romance, some sexiness, some passion, some humor, and some entertainment. So the idea is to try to reach across to the other side in a way that is palatable to them, but then to show them just right in front of them what is at stake with climate change, as well as to dig into the corruption that has gotten us to the place that we are at. But to speak to what you were talking about, one of the things that I think is very important is that we create a vision for how we can create a sustainable future. To really address what that sustainable future can look like. Yes. And then to give people the pieces, the actions that they can take online right away when they're in that state of inspiration, when they're in that state of, oh my God, I can't believe this is the reality that we're facing. Show them how they can be a part of the solution. Show them how their actions are connected to either dragging us down into a future hell or lifting us out of it.
So, that's what I'm working on. And I just want to say that, Verushka and I feel it's so fascinating because we met during a radio interview in New York, and because our projects were very similarly inspired. And as we got to know each other more and more, we began to realize that the similarities between our projects were rather powerful, not just in terms of the environmental issues, but some of the characters lined up, and there were so many themes that ran that were so strong. And so the more we've gotten to know each other, the more we've started to work and collaborate, and so I'm really excited about that and really grateful.
Synergies and collaboration.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And Katie, so that we can have time for a question,
Absolutely.
love to hear what's the most exciting thing you're working on right now.
Absolutely. So I have a tendency to talk really fast, so I'm going to talk about some large, big picture things that we're working on, but then how they're grounded in reality. So most people here know about fossil fuel divestment. We just heard a little bit about what's going on the front lines and how that's happening. Now, we have to do both. We have to divest and we have to invest. So how do we finance the future we want to see? I have to quote Bucky because Amanda's here. But we don't change things by fighting the existing paradigm. We change things by creating a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So that's the most exciting thing right now, is that through an initiative called Finance the Future, we're actually looking at how we can build a model portfolio that's capable of allocating $1 trillion, that is fully diversified and does take certain things off the table, like extractive industries, like companies that are violating human rights, and optimizing that to be the most efficient and profitable possible, and bringing that in before the halls of the United Nations at COP23. At our Global Finance Summit, which builds upon work that we've been doing from COP21 and recently at COP22 in Morocco, where we, a group of us, many of whom are actually here, hosted the private sector to talk about solutions needed to allocate more capital at a global scale to the tune of the trillions that we need in order to scale up these solutions. And then I'm going to ground it really, really fast in what's happening on the ground with me in New York City. And we just entered into a joint venture with a real estate developer who is a woman, and she is a can I say badass? She is a badass. And she's been developing real estate for 20 years, and she just gets in there and she gets it done. But the type of real estate is the most important part here. We are transforming former power plants into revitalized community centers that are also profitable, with diverse revenue streams that actually entice investors to come in and invest in that real asset and show them an ROI. And that's really exciting, because to build a model that's going to make the current model obsolete, we need to start transforming our infrastructure, anchoring it in community, and showing investors that it's profitable. I mean, this is a power plant that used to power Grand Central, and now it's going to power community, innovative development, and regenerative growth. So it's exciting stuff.
Fantastic. One question from the floor. Fantastic. Chip. And Chip, I want to give a shout out to you, because when we were in Hawaii last August, you were really such a champion for the role that women can play in a sustainable future. We need more men like you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Well, that goes to my question. What is it, and maybe we can get one word from each, that we men can do? There's 3.75 billion women, but that means, so what is it that the other half can do to achieve what is necessary?
Brilliant. Can we have one word from each of you, or maybe two?
Create space. What was it?
Create space. Katie, your 2 words?
Respect.
Respect. Anita?
I break rules. Nurture the feminine within you.
Oh, beautiful. Osprey.
Listen, learn, make space.
Excellent. And now I'm going to ask each of our brilliant panelists to leave you with one parting thought before we wrap up. So this time I'm going to start with Katie. What is the one parting thought that you would like to leave the audience with?
I have so many thoughts. Curveball. I thought I was going to have a little time. So know where your money sleeps, and if you don't, figure it out and invest in solutions. But also, okay, one of the biggest challenges we're facing is that capital is too risky. This is unprecedented. We're not going to be the first loss. I won't invest first. I don't want to jump in first. Don't just put your toe in. Get with some of your friends. Everyone in here has powerful networks. You can de-risk capital pools by getting together, by forming collaboratives, and by co-investing in solutions that you think are right. And you can work with people that are innovating in this space because there's no shortage of innovative minds in the financial sector that want to make this change. So dive in, invest, and yeah, that's it.
This is Julie's philanthropic model for women already, so we need to multiply that around the world. Fantastic, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes we tend to sit back. I mean, people in general have a tendency, maybe not you guys at all, but people in general, I think, have a tendency to sit back and wait for government to fix their problems. And the problem with that is not only the corruption in government, which is humongous, but also the fact that even those who do want to do good in government, I think sometimes they feel like their hands are shackled because they know that the world is depending on fossil fuels. They know that we are driving around in our cars.
So your call, so we have time for everyone.
Oh,
your
sorry.
call.
So basically, I think that we have to start with empowering the people to lead so that the government follows.
Fantastic. Woo! Anita.
Yes. As I said, I'm going to be going to the Amazon on the 3rd or 2nd. And if you want to be presented there, please leave your card. I sit back there. Leave your card, and I'll be glad to take it to the Sacred Headwaters and presence you there in a very conscious way. And then the thing I ask for Pachamama Alliance is we may have reached hundreds of thousands, but there's hundreds and millions more we need to reach. If you can share with us the businesses, the corporations, the nonprofit groups, any of the institutions we can get in there to help transform the kind of thinking and behaving, we'd really appreciate that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Osprey.
I think it's really an important moment to understand that our movements need to come together and that we need to presence here Black Lives Matter. We need to presence here a lot of frontline communities that are not represented. And that happens. It's not a judgment statement. It's more just to remember that and understand that a lot of women's leadership is based upon inclusion and the fact that we understand that if we're going to really address the urgency of this crisis, we are actively working on inclusion of all people and all different walks of life, and that women in their networks are really working on this. And I think it's something we can really encourage in our own work, and to also really understand that we are facing thousands of years of colonization, of patriarchy, of neoliberal capitalistic structures, and it's good to just name those things because they are part of this extractive worldview that we have got to get out of. And we're not going to be able to do it alone, and we really need each other. And I think women are really good at being inclusive. So are men. But women are really rising to the way that you can see even women on the stage are holding hands. It's just very natural for us to do that and to really encourage that because we need all of us.
Brilliant. And I would like to conclude this Women Rising panel by giving you a sneak peek of some of the things that the panelists told me as we were preparing. Aria said, women have to stop standing on the sidelines. And then Katie said, we need systemic change to finance the future. Osprey went a step further and said, we need transformative, inclusive exchange. And then creating a vision for a sustainable future, and finishing with Anita, who said to me, we need to all stand in the space of serious love because we are all one. Thank you to this incredible...